Dark News.
Dark News.
Broadcast. This is a show about cryptocurrencies, darknets,
Anonymity,
and uncensorship.
And we are live. Welcome to Dark News. I am your host, Kristov Atlas, and this is going to be the very first episode of Dark News. The show is going to be all about the digital underground, talking about darknets, about Tor and I2P, about cryptocurrencies, about hackers, about black markets, all that good stuff. But the focus is going to be on the ethical use of these things. It's not going to be about committing property crimes or any of that stuff. It's all about how the dark web is going to bring freedom to the world. So first, let's start off with the markets for today. So here are some of the markets that I'm going to be tracking over the course of Dark News. I think that all of these commodities that we're tracking are very important to the future of freedom in the world and very relevant to the dark web as well. Now, all of these commodities I'm going to be putting in terms of how much of the commodity you can get per US dollar, or blood dollar, or petrodollar, or whatever you want to call it. So today, the dollar is currently trading for 1.55 grams of silver, 23.71 milligrams of gold, 0.58 millibits per dollar, 1.10 dark coins per dollar, 12.50 rounds of 22 LR ammo, and 4.42 rounds of 9mm Luger ammo. And since last week, that represents mostly an improvement for the dollar, about a 4% increase for silver and gold, how much of those you can get per dollar, a decrease in the amount of bitcoins that you can get per dollar, a slight decrease in the number of dark coins you can get. Dark coin has been rising, and some increases in the amount of ammo that you can get per dollar. Now, why include ammo in this market tracking that we're doing on Dark News? Dark News is not about guns. It's not about the sale of guns in particular. Dark News doesn't care about guns very much, but ammo is a very interesting market indicator. It is a market sentiment indicator when people think that there's going to be an economic disruption. And this is mostly US centric, I would say. They start to buy up ammo and the price of ammo goes up. And there's also many tie-ins with the manufacturing base in the United States and the amount of censorship of gun-related property in the United States as well. So I think this is going to be an interesting indicator that we'll continue to track over time, and we'll see what we can learn from these prices. And at the very bottom here, we have the GSBD market cap, gold, silver, Bitcoin, dark coin. And the total value of all of those assets together, based on above ground reserves and the amounts of these cryptocurrencies that have been mined, the total is $232.31 trillion currently. And that's overwhelmingly made up by gold and silver currently, but I bet you in 5 years that may change. So those are the Dark News markets. Now I'm going to go through about 3 news items that are relevant to the Dark News, and then we'll do a little bit of Q&A. So you can join in the Q&A by loading this up in YouTube. There'll be a link to the Google Hangout, and if you have a Google account, then you should see the Q&A plugin load up to the right of your screen, and I'll be addressing your questions towards the end of the show. So the first story that we will be covering today is some new news that was leaked from the Snowden leaks. Coming out this week, there's a series of blog articles that have been leaked. These are internal blogs that are maintained by the NSA. They are contributed to by NSA employees and for NSA eyes only. And this series of blogs that was leaked is entitled I Hunt Sysadmins. Now, why do we care about the NSA leaks? Well, I think there could be a few reasons. One, if you already agree with what the NSA is doing, you agree with their wholesale hacking of the internet, of data collection and so forth, then I think there are a couple of reasons why you could still be interested in these stories. One is that this type of hacking is very well funded, and so it represents some of the cutting edge material that's going on in terms of what hackers are doing. And also, not only is it along the cutting edge, but many of the black hat hackers out there who are not part of the NSA are paying attention to this leaked material and adapting their techniques to match some of the NSA techniques that are being used. Now, if you don't agree with what the NSA is doing, and I would consider myself to fall under this category, then of course, what we gain from this is a sense of the breadth of what the NSA is doing. This is what I would call sort of a tale from the Leviathan, from the monstrous, gigantic military industrial complex in the United States. And it might give us some information about how to protect ourselves as best as we can. So let's jump into the iHunt sysadmin story. So it's all written by one blog author. And as you can see from this first page that I've loaded up here, it has a very relaxed kind of tone to it. In fact, all of the blog articles have the author's current mood posted with a little emoticon. In this first one, he's just doing okay. And as we go through these articles, we'll talk a little bit about the moral narrative of these blog articles to try and put things in perspective, and we'll also talk about the technical aspects as well. So I've highlighted some sections here for you. I'm going to read from the blog article. So the first page, the blog author, he's part of the intelligence gathering aspect of the NSA. And he says, it would be a shame for people to constantly attend security conferences like DEF CON and Black Hat and so forth, hoping to learn that cool new thing about hacking, when there is exponentially more knowledge sitting around them every single day at work at the NSA. And what he's basically saying is, hey, look, we have a ton of money that we're putting into hiring smart people and technology that no one else in the world really has access to because we just have such a mega amount of money to spend into it. Isn't it cool to work for the NSA where we can share the secret information with each other? Now, that first page was unclassified, but as we get deeper into these blog articles, this will be increasingly more classified at the secret and top secret level. So the author says, as much as we complain about our big data problem, collection processing issues, dismal infrastructure, outdated browsers / operating systems, our ability to pull bits out of random places on the internet, bring them back to the mother base, that's the NSA, and evaluate and build intelligence off them is just plain awesome. And what they're talking about there with the big data problem is that they're culling such an enormous amount of information from the internet that it's admittedly difficult to sort through and to gain actionable intelligence from. Continuing on, if we only collected the data that we knew we wanted, yeah, we'd fill some of our requirements for our job, but this is a whole world of possibilities that we'd be missing. It'd be like going on a road trip, but wearing a blindfold the entire time and only removing it when you're at one of your destinations. Yeah, you'd see some stuff, but you'd be missing out on the entire journey. Now, I think it's very interesting that this NSA employee is comparing the massively invasive actions that they're taking to a road trip. I get the sense that he finds his job to be like a fun little vacation where things are not to be taken too seriously. So, being in SID, our overall goal is to produce intelligence to give to decision makers. SID is basically signals analysis. Upfront, sysadmins, system administrators, generally are not my end target. My end target is the extremist or terrorist or government official that happens to be using the network some admin takes care of. Sysadmins are a means to an end. So what's a sysadmin? It's a guy who has a job for some company or for some organization, and he takes care of a network of computers, and he generally has the highest privileges out of all of the people that are on that network. He can create new users, he makes sure that everything stays online, is working smoothly, adds to the infrastructure, etc. And so what this NSA employee is talking about is no one gives us the instruction to hack these sysadmins. They say, go after this the alleged extremist, alleged terrorist, government official. In the United States or other places, not entirely clear. Let's just say a politician somewhere in the world. And in the process of targeting that individual, what they will do is there will be privacy collateral damage along the way. And I think that the blog author reflects a kind of attitude that shows that he doesn't really care about this collateral damage. It doesn't mean much to him. If a sysadmin has his privacy invaded, if he has his company's private property being invaded by the NSA, it's not a big deal to him. It's a means to an end. It's all about providing intelligence to decision makers. So now, rhetorical question posed to the blog author. Well, how are you just going to get CNE access on an admin? CNE stands for Computer and Network Exploitation. So what they're basically talking about is getting root access to computers that are being used by the administrator, personal or owned by a company, or access to his accounts on various websites and machines. And to this he answers, most of the time I'm going to rely on Quantum, we'll talk about Quantum in a moment, to get access to their account. Yeah, you could try spam, but people are getting smarter over the last 5 to 10 years. It's not as reliable anymore. So in order to work our quantum magic in an admin, we'll need to have some kind of webmail or Facebook selector for them. All right, so let's talk about what this stuff means. Quantum is a program that was previously leaked as part of the Edward Snowden documents. And Quantum is a way of doing a man-in-the-middle attack on users of the internet. A man-in-the-middle attack means there's two parties that are trying to privately communicate with each other. That could be just a regular person and the Google web servers, for example. And the attacker is going to insert himself somewhere in the middle and meddle with that communication. He might be eavesdropping on it. He might be modifying the communications. He might replace Google altogether and pretend to be Google himself. And that's basically what Quantum does. NSA has, probably extra legally, tapped into the internet infrastructure, and what they're able to do is they're so deeply intertwined into that infrastructure, they can respond to the internet requests of users faster than the actual service providers. So if I go to google.com and I'm being targeted by Quantum, what they will do is their Quantum servers will respond with a fake web page before the Google servers will respond with a fake web page. They'll basically beat Google to the gun and pretend to be Google from that point on. And then what they'll do from that point on is they'll be looking to use something like Fox Acid. Fox Acid is another NSA program that was leaked that's an exploit kit. And what it basically is you have some target, you get them to connect to Fox Acid, and then it serves a bunch of malware to their computers. It tries to tailor it to whatever their particular web browser is or operating system or whatever kind of software they're using, and try to own their systems. And so what this NSA employee is talking about is we're going to try and ensnare the system administrator to get him to connect to some website where we can beat the website to the response, get him to connect to the Quantum server instead. Quantum is then going to refer them to the Fox Acid servers, and we're going to try and infect the machine that he's using. And he talks briefly about, well, you could try to send spam, but people have been getting smarter over the last few years. I don't know for sure what he's talking about there, but what I think he's talking about is trying to do phishing attacks through, for example, email. So you send the sysadmin an email, it tries to look legitimate, it gives them a link to something, and maybe that link goes to one of the Fox Acid servers. And he's saying people are getting smarter. They tend to be less likely to click on suspicious links through email. Email systems are doing a better job of filtering out this kind of attack. And so that's not going to necessarily work. All right, continuing on from the blog article. Most of the time, I end up running across their official email address that's hosted on their own network. That's generally not a recipe for success in the quantum world. What we'd really like is a personal webmail or Facebook account to target. So remember what we said about quantum just a moment ago. It's a way of intercepting requests going to a legitimate server such as Google or Facebook and beating Google and Facebook to the punch and sending back a malicious response first. Now, if a sysadmin is receiving emails from the NSA and he clicks on something and it just links to something that's hosted locally, then it's not going to go out to Google or Facebook or whatever. There won't be an opportunity for the NSA to intercept that request and replace it or insert a malicious one. So therefore, they are personally targeting the system administrators through their personal accounts like webmail or Facebook. So now we're not even talking about just violating the private property of the company that the sysadmin works for. We're talking about going into the personal accounts that a sysadmin would be using to chat with his friends and so forth, and infecting his computers by those means. I think this really reflects the lack of boundaries that these NSA employees have on what they're doing. All right, so the last bit, I skipped over a couple pages that was some kind of technical jargon, but to keep this not too technical. So he's talking about router hacking, and he says, I'm not talking about your home router, I'm talking about bigger routers such as Cisco's, Juniper's, that are used by internet service providers for their infrastructure. So in this, he's talking about hacking the routers that make up the internet infrastructure rather than a sysadmin's like home router, because once you get access to these internet infrastructure routers, you have access to way more information. You can do more powerful stuff. Hacking routers has been good business for us and our Five Eyes partners for some time now, but it's becoming more apparent that other nation states are honing their skills and joining the scene. Now, what's this about the Five Eyes partners? Five Eyes is a consortium of spy agencies working for different nation states. Now, these spy agencies, they have some limits in that they occasionally get some type of legal oversight. It may be extremely limited, but it's there. And when it pops up, they don't want to get completely steamrolled. They basically don't want to ruin the careers of particular politicians. So when there are legal limits on what spy agencies can do to spy on their own citizens within their own borders, they simply come up with a workaround, and that's what the Five Eyes scenario is. It's a consortium of 5 spy agencies who, rather than spying on their own domestic citizens, they spy on each other's citizens and then share that information with each other, which is considered to be not extra legal according to their, NSA legal counsels. So some of the organizations in there, NSA, GCHQ in the UK, and some others. And he goes on to talk a little bit about what you can do once you hack one of these infrastructure routers. You can add credentials, allow yourself to log in anytime you choose, basically adding backdoor access to the router. You can add and change routing rules. And what routing is, it's basically the way that we get messages around the internet is that we're routing it from machine to machine. And so when you change these routing rules, that allows you to kind of change where these messages are going. It could be changing it to a place where you can more easily collect data. It could be changing it to a place where you can insert malicious data and so forth. Or just denying access to certain kinds of information on the web. You could also set up packet capture capability. Imagine running the Wireshark tool on ISP's infrastructure router. You can collect credentials passed over the wire. Credentials means usernames and passwords and that kind of stuff. Can weaken any VPN encryption capabilities on the router, forcing it to create easily decryptable tunnels. And that's a very popular tactic by the NSA, is to not just break into computers, but to undermine their encryption capabilities so that they can easily crack the encryption. And in this case, this would simply mean doing something like downgrading the versions of the encryption that are being used, allowing them to use older and older versions of encryption that the NSA can easily crack, or anyone else really. You could also install a dorked version of the operating system with whatever functionality you want pre-built in. So he's just basically talking about installing software on computers that looks like it's exactly the same as what you had before, but it's been subtly modified to do other stuff. So to understand the moral narrative of these articles, I'd like to take a look at another article related to NSA activity. This is an article from the same website, and it's entitled "The NSA Secret Role in the U.S. Assassination Program." Because the NSA often talks about being purely about data collection. It's just a way of passively obtaining information. There are no moral consequences to their actions. It's all just perfectly safe and hunky-dory for everyone. So again, I highlighted some sections of the article that I'm going to read out loud to you. The National Security Agency is using complex analysis of electronic surveillance rather than human intelligence as the primary method to locate targets for lethal drone strikes, an unreliable tactic that results in the deaths of innocent or unidentified people. According to a former drone operator for the military's Joint Special Operations Command, JSOC, who also worked with the NSA, the agency often identifies targets based on controversial metadata analysis and cell phone tracking technologies. Rather than confirming a target's identity with operatives or informants on the ground, the CIA or the US military then orders a strike based on the activity and location of the mobile phone a person is believed to be using. The drone operator, who agrees to discuss the top secret programs on the condition of anonymity, was a member of JSOC's High Value Targeting Task Force, which is charged with identifying, capturing, or killing terrorist suspects in Yemen, Somalia, Afghanistan, and elsewhere. One problem he explains is that the targets are increasingly aware of the NSA's reliance on geolocating and have moved to thwart this tactic. Some have as many as 16 different SIM cards, little chips that you put in your card to identify the phone to the cell network, associated with their identity within the high-value target system. Others, unaware that their mobile phones are being targeted, lend their phone with the SIM card in it to friends, children, spouses, and family members. So basically what this whistleblower is saying is, look, we are bombing people with drones based on the location of cell phones that we believed are being used by military targets. And as the article points out, some of those military targets are wise to this, and they can get around it by sending their phones to weird places and making them hard to track. Some of them are unaware of this, and they will lend their phones to civilians who are then murdered by these drone strikes. The former JSOC drone operator estimates that the overwhelming majority of high-value target operations he worked on in Afghanistan relied on signals intelligence, known as SIGINT, based on the NSA's phone tracking technology. Quote, everything they turned into a kinetic strike or a night raid was almost 90% that, he says. You could tell because you'd go back to the mission reports and it will say this mission was triggered by SIGINT, which means it was triggered by geolocation cell. And then within the NSA, the Washington Post reported, quote, a motto quickly caught on at GeoCell, we track 'em, you whack 'em. So I think this is a very disturbing kind of trend. What we're talking about is the NSA collecting information, locating cell phones, using metadata to try and associate those cell phones with individuals, and then somewhat blindly, the other end of the military, the kinetic end of the military, dropping bombs on people based on the location of those cell phones. Does not reflect the kind of due diligence that the White House administration is claiming that they are performing in these drone strikes. They've said that they have taken every possible step to try and prevent civilian casualties. Last page. Bryant describes the program as highly compartmentalized. Drone operators taking shots at targets on the ground have little idea where the intelligence is coming from. I don't know who we worked with, Bryant says. We were never privy to that sort of information. If the NSA did work with us, I have no clue. All right, so here's what I see taking place. We have NSA employees that have an incredibly cavalier attitude towards their jobs. They don't care that they're infringing on people's rights. They don't care that there is privacy collateral damage in the course of their job. They treat it like it's a fun little place to camp out with your other hacker friends, to have access to cool hacking tools that you wouldn't have access to anywhere else in the world. And then they pass that information up the chain. And of course, that's compartmentalized as well, so they don't really know what happens with that information. And ostensibly, they don't really care. Meanwhile, some of this information is being used to assassinate people, to murder people. And the people that are carrying out the drone strikes don't even know where their information is coming from. So the interface between these two aspects of the military is the military commanders, and it's up to them to attempt to make sure that moral actions are being taken by the military. I personally would say that that is an oxymoron, but I think that regardless of your attitude towards the military, you can see some real systemic issues with the way that this stuff is laid out. So, moving on to the next story. Government Turkey's gobble Twitter, Tor usage skyrockets. So this is a story from the Daily Dot, and basically what they're talking about is recently the Turkish government banned access to Twitter through their government-censored internet service providers. Now, the Turkish government has had a long and storied past with the Twitter microblogging website. For the last several years, Twitter has been used by protesters in Turkey to organize protests, to inform the rest of the world of the state of their protests, and get the word out about what the Turkish government is doing. And this kind of information is difficult to get out to the rest of the world because a lot of the mainstream media in Turkey, much like in other places, is very heavily controlled by the government. So the Turkish prime minister has been quoted as saying Twitter is one of the worst things ever to happen. It's the chief challenge to democracy, and other such hyperbolic things. Now, why did Turkey recently ban Twitter? Well, they have been proposing the passage of a law that would basically make such bans by the government legal. And there were protests against the passing of that law, and in response to the protests, they banned Twitter. Slightly ironic. So the Daily Dot reports, Twitter's role in Turkish unrest has been profound. Protests were first organized and recorded on social media while the state media ignored them, etc. And in response to this banning, the Tor network has experienced a 10,000 user increase in the last week. Tor is it's an anti-censorship mechanism, software that's available for anyone to download on the web. And basically what it allows you to do is it encrypts your traffic, safely shuttles it out of your censored country, and you're able to adopt the identity and the internet connection of someone somewhere else in the world, a random person out there in the world that's participating in the Tor network, who is presumably not being censored in the same way. And so it's a way of getting access to uncensored information. I think that it's a very powerful tool for people in places like Turkey. And if you want to help out people in Turkey through Tor, what you can do is you can go to the Tor download page, and they have a series of bundles that you can use. So they have a relay bundle for Windows. And what the relay bundle is, it's some software that you download, you run it, and you act as a relay in the Tor network for other people. And it's just a way of increasing the bandwidth and the anonymity of the Tor network for people that are in places like Turkey. If you're a slightly more intermediate or advanced user, you could also download the bundles for being a Tor exit node or a Tor bridge. An exit node is basically wherever that Tor user's internet traffic is coming out of the Tor network to connect to the rest of the internet. So if someone in Turkey is using Tor and they connect to the Tor and their traffic ends up coming out through my internet connection at home to access the web, then I'm acting as an exit node for that user in the Tor network. So you can do that as well. You could also do a bridge. A bridge is basically if a place like Turkey decides to ban Tor as well and they want to try and block access to Tor, bridges are unpublicized ways of accessing Tor, ways of getting into the Tor network that are not publicly announced to the rest of the world and therefore more difficult for the Turkish government to block access to. Both having a bridge and an exit node puts your software at somewhat more at risk for attack. So I really do recommend it more for those intermediate or advanced users. And if you just want to use Tor as a regular user to evade censorship or for anonymity reasons, you can also very easily download the Tor browser bundle that's available on a variety of operating systems. Or you can use the Tails Linux operating system. It's a way of booting into a Linux operating system off of a USB drive in a sort of impermanent way. Won't have access to your hard drive. Everything is running off of the USB drive and running in resident memory. And it sets all the Tor stuff up for you, so you don't have to do any additional configuration whatsoever. And you can do all of your programs through Tor that way. You can do your chat, your email, your web stuff, all that kind of stuff. So it's a very, very useful tool. So I think it's very interesting the way that people often compare black markets to more registered, quote unquote, legitimate businesses. And today I want to compare two exchanges or places where people have been exchanging Bitcoins on the web. One is a dark web website and the other one is not. So the dark web website is the Silk Road 2.0. The Silk Road 2.0 was launched after the original Silk Road was shut down in relation to the FBI seizures and arrests. And the anonymous or pseudonymous, I guess, administrator of Silk Road 2.0 goes by the handle DEFCON. And he wrote a blog post or a forum post on Silk Road 2.0 forums on March 12th. If you're not familiar with the Silk Road, it's a black market website where people can use Bitcoins to exchange money for goods, and those goods are often so-called vice items such as drugs, weapons, and so forth. Silk Road 2.0 was hacked at one point. So as a buyer protection mechanism, they had a centralized wallet that people could use as escrow. So rather than paying the person that's sending you your goods up front, you put it in escrow so that the seller knows that the Bitcoins are available. And once the transaction goes through, you release it from escrow to him. Or if there's anything that goes wrong, you can sort of try and settle it through some other means. But the Bitcoins don't automatically go to the seller or to the buyer. And the problem with that kind of centralized escrow approach is that they're more prone to hacking. So it got hacked. We don't know exactly who did it. It could have been these administrators of the website. It could have been some outside hackers. We really don't know. But some customer funds were lost. Now, what's interesting about the Silk Road 2.0, you would think that since it's a black market, maybe they would be a lot less trustworthy than people that are not anonymous. Maybe they would just run off with people's funds. Maybe they would panic and just shut down the website because they don't want people to come after them for the funds. But what happened instead was DEF CON announced that they were going to be repaying 100% of the customer funds that were lost, coming out of their own paychecks and accounts through the fees that are charged on Silk Road 2.0. And they're going to continue to do this until everyone was paid off. And according to this forum post, as of March 12th, they had partially repaid 30.8% of total victims. They had fully repaid 13.2% of the total victims. And they, at the current rate, they were estimating that they could pay off everyone's lost funds by June 13th, 2014. Now, I don't know about you, but it kind of blows my mind that the administrators of a dark web anonymous service, people that are involved with drug sales, gun sales, etc., that they have the kind of integrity to forego their own livelihood until all of the customer funds are restored. That to me is pretty amazing. And not only that, they've demonstrated some security savvy by saying, look, we're not going to have any escrow service running until we get it to the next level where it's more secure. So they're talking about multi-party dividing up the private keys and multi-signature based escrow rather than this centralized escrow that someone can just run in and steal the private keys for and snatch up all the Bitcoins. And that's a lot more than many of the white market Bitcoin exchanges have done. So compare that to a place like Mt. Gox, where they lost hundreds of thousands of Bitcoins for customers, and so far have made no promises to restore any of those funds. And they haven't talked about taking any of the security precautions or anything else like that. Now, there are absolutely some legitimate exchanges that are taking the right kinds of security precautions, and that's fantastic. But it's just very interesting to me to see that there is this regulated, legally compliant business in the form of Mt. Gox that in a lot of ways has failed their customers much, much more so than a black market, deep web, anonymous Silk Road 2.0 website. That's just very interesting to me to pay attention to, and I'm curious to see how this trends in the future in terms of white market businesses versus black market businesses. I somewhat suspect that in the future we will see more and more businesses moving into the gray and black markets as they get fed up with regulations and they see the way that cryptocurrencies enable them to circumvent these regulations. So that's all the stories for today. I'm going to head on over to the Q&A section to answer your questions. So you still have some time to get in your questions if you have some. I'd be happy to answer any questions you have about Tor, I2P, anonymity, Bitcoin, Darkcoin, any of that stuff. So let's start with the first question. This is a comment. Correction. This is from Tone P. Twitter has been banned in Turkey as there was a leaked vocal conversation on Twitter involving financial fraud between the Prime Minister, I believe, Erdogan, and his son. He has vowed to destroy it based on that. All right, good to know. Good to know. Thank you for letting us know about that. Next question from Steve. So, do you plan on informing IRS about your Bitcoin as property tax? That's a great question. Absolutely, especially as someone that is vocally talking about issues of cryptocurrencies and anonymity. I plan to fully disclose all of my cryptocurrency assets to the government agencies like the IRS. I'll be paying capital gains taxes on them and income tax and all that good stuff. I know that there will be some people that won't be doing that. My professional opinion is that the kind of anonymity technologies that people would need to really mitigate a lot of the risk associated with it, taking that kind of decision, they're not quite there yet. We don't have the right kinds of technologies that are going to stand up against organizations like the NSA and the IRS, and even the ones that are out there, they're difficult to use. There is some stuff out there. This is something that I talk about quite a bit in my book, and I walk people through all of the steps, literally screenshot by screenshot, to show them how they can do the best possible job that they can do right now. So if you're interested in learning about that, I would definitely check out the book. But I think that if people are looking to make some very risky decisions with regards to their Bitcoin, they're not just looking for basic privacy, but they're looking to have a kind of the ultimate level of anonymity to stand up against state actors. I think the technology is not quite there yet. And one more question. Seeing as how we're on the subject of NSA, have you also stopped using Facebook with the accusations that of 300,000 NSA malware infections transferred by the platform? That's a very good question. So no, I still use Facebook. I still find it to be a very useful platform for connecting with friends and colleagues and so forth. There are some technical things that you can do to help protect yourself against Facebook. The thing that I would most recommend to do that's like the least technically challenging is if your computer is good enough, you can run virtual machines. A virtual machine is basically an operating system inside an operating system. And what it allows you to do is you're running an operating system with some software encapsulating it and protecting the outer operating system from the one that's running inside of it. And what's good about that is if you do get a malware infection on this kind of, we call them the host or the guest operating system. So if you are, so the guest, let's say that I have a Mac and I'm running some virtual machine software and I'm running a Windows virtual machine. Then the Windows machine is the guest operating system and the OS X is going to be the host operating system. And if that Windows guest machine gets infected by some malware, that protects somewhat my Mac operating system from that infection. They will need to employ some additional exploits to get through the virtual machine software up to the host operating system level. And moreover, if I make a practice of regularly returning the virtual machine to a known good state, then every time I do that, I sort of eradicate any malware that has infected that guest operating system. And the nice thing about virtual machines is that they make that quite easy to do. You can just you can set up your computer the way that you like it, take a snapshot as kind of a baseline, and then every once in a while you can just return to that snapshot. And it just takes like 10-20 seconds to revert back to that state, and it's a really good way to give you some added layers of protection. I have a friend who takes it a step further. He has a dozen or more virtual machines, a separate one running for each different website that he uses. So in doing so, he's segregating websites like Facebook from affecting his accounts on other websites. So let's say, for example, he has a localbitcoins.com account, and he also has a Facebook account. So he has one virtual machine for Facebook. If the NSA targets him or he gets caught up in the dragnet, and that machine gets infected by some malware through connecting to Facebook, then it won't be able to jump over to the virtual machine that he's using to connect to localbitcoins.com. And so that's just a way of keeping things segregated. You could also run the virtual machines through Tor and so forth, so they won't even be able to tell where this virtual machine is connecting to the internet and all that good stuff. If people are interested, I'd love to do some tutorial videos about this kind of stuff and go into more detail about it. So I do believe that will do it for questions today. Thank you so much for joining me on Dark News on the very first episode. This has been Kristov Atlas, your host and World Crypto News correspondent, and I will see you soon.
Welcome to Dark News.
Dark News.
Dark News.
Oh, shit.
They'll never know what it means to have a private moment to themselves.
BBC posted their first article about Silk Road and Tor. Oh, I don't have to go to the street corner and get shot?
I think Bitcoin means 1,000 Silk Roads.
This is a show about cryptocurrencies,
anonymity, and uncensorship.